Hoover Dam is losing power, not because anything is broken, not because the turbines failed. The water behind it is simply disappearing. Lake Mead is dropping toward a line that engineers hoped it would never reach, a line where 12 of the dam's 17 turbines shut down for good. And the snowpack that is supposed to refill it this spring just came in at 22% of normal. At full power, Hoover Dam produces 2,080 megawatts of electricity across 17 main turbines, enough to power roughly 1.3 million homes across Nevada, Arizona, and Southern California. For decades, it ran at or near that number because Lake Mead, the largest reservoir in the United States, stayed close to full. Power companies in 3 states built their grids around it. Cities grew in the desert because Hoover made it possible. That version of Hoover Dam does not exist anymore. 5 of those 17 turbines are already offline. The dam is putting out somewhere between 1,000 and 1,300 megawatts on any given day, roughly half of what it was built for. And the link between water level and power output is not slow and steady. It is a staircase with a cliff at the bottom. That cliff sits at 1,035 feet. At that depth, the water pressure behind the dam is too low to drive 12 of Hoover's 17 turbines. Only 5 specially built wide-head turbines installed between 2011 and 2016 for exactly this situation can still run below that line. The Bureau of Reclamation spent years rebuilding those 5 units because they saw this coming. They lowered the dam's cutoff point from 1,050 feet all the way down to 950 feet. That rebuild bought time. It did not fix the problem. If Lake Mead crosses 1,035 feet, output crashes from around 1,300 megawatts to roughly 380. That is an 80% drop from the dam's original design power. Lake Mead is sitting at about 1,054 feet, that is 20 feet above the cliff. Below that, the situation gets worse in steps. At 950 feet, even the wide-head turbines stop. Hoover makes 0 electricity. The power plant goes completely dark. At 895 feet, the dam reaches what engineers call the shutdown point, the level where water can no longer flow through to the river below. The shutdown point is more than 150 feet below current levels and remains unlikely within the next 5 years. The 1,035-foot turbine cliff does not. Federal models show a 10% chance of reaching it by spring of 2027, and the emergency decision to cut Glen Canyon releases is pushing that chance higher every month. And the water that is supposed to keep it above that line is not coming. The Colorado River starts as snowmelt in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. Roughly 80% of the river's total flow starts as mountain snow. Every reservoir downstream, Lake Powell, Lake Mead, Lake Havasu, is waiting for that yearly spring deposit, and this year it is not arriving. By early April 2026, snow water levels across the upper Colorado Basin had dropped to 26% of the 30-year average. In Colorado alone, statewide snowpack fell to 24% of normal, the lowest ever recorded. Some stations in the Gunnison and San Juan basins reported less than 15% of average. This is where the story takes a turn nobody expected. The snowpack did not just come in low, it peaked a full month early. Normally, upper Colorado snow water levels reach their high point around April 6th. This year, they peaked around March 8th. March 2026 was the warmest March ever recorded across the lower 48 states. Across the Colorado River Basin, temperatures ran nearly 14 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. The snow that did exist melted before it was supposed to, and much of that early melt dried up or soaked into bone-dry soil long before it reached any stream. The ground was so dry it soaked up the first wave of runoff like a sponge. The spring runoff numbers tell the rest. Inflow into Lake Powell from April through July 2026 is expected at 1.4 million acre-feet, 22% of the 30-year average. The full water year forecast is 3.87 million acre-feet, or 40% of normal. Last year, the January forecast predicted 81% of average. By April, it dropped to 67%. The final real number came in at 41%. The gap between forecast and reality keeps growing, and it almost always tilts in the wrong direction. Those numbers land on a system that is already running on fumes. Total Colorado River storage across all major reservoirs is at roughly 36% of full. That is not one bad year. That is 25 straight years of the river bringing less water than was promised to the states that depend on it. There is a reason this keeps getting worse, and it is not just low snowfall. The Colorado River Basin is in the middle of what is now being called an aridification, a word that means something very different from drought. Drought means the dry spell will end at some point. Aridification means the new normal is dry, and it is not going back. The current dry stretch, running from 2000 to today, is the worst 22-year period the Southwest has seen in at least 1,200 years. And roughly 42% of that dryness is directly tied to human-caused warming. The Colorado River loses about 5% of its total flow for every degree Fahrenheit of warming. Over the past 100 years, that adds up to a flow drop of roughly 13 to 20%, even in years when rain and snow come in near normal. Warmer air melts snow earlier, pulls more water out of soil and reservoirs, and strips moisture from the system before it ever reaches a dam. Even a normal snowpack year will now produce less river flow than the same snowpack would have 30 years ago. The river's ability to turn snow into water is getting weaker in real time. And that brings us to the decision the federal government just made. A decision that trades one crisis for another. On April 17, 2026, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum announced an emergency drought plan. The main piece is a massive cut to water releases from Glen Canyon Dam, the structure that holds back Lake Powell roughly 370 miles upstream of Hoover. The Bureau is slashing Glen Canyon's yearly release from 7.48 million acre-feet to 6 million acre-feet through September 2026, the largest cut ever made under current rules. On top of that, the government is tapping Flaming Gorge Reservoir in northeastern Utah, releasing up to 1 million acre-feet downstream toward Lake Powell over the next year. Lake Powell is sitting at about 3,526 feet. The lowest level where it can still make power is 3,490 feet. That is a gap of only 36 feet. Glen Canyon Dam is not just a power plant. It is the control valve for the entire lower Colorado River. Every gallon that reaches Lake Mead, that feeds the Central Arizona Project Canal, that flows to the Imperial Valley, passes through Glen Canyon first. If Powell drops below its power pool, the Bureau loses the ability to control water flow. Water would have to pass through the dam's outlet tunnels, structures that were never built for non-stop heavy use and already show signs of damage from past emergency releases. So the federal government is choosing to save Powell. The cost is Lake Mead. Every acre-foot of water that does not flow through Glen Canyon Dam is an acre-foot that never reaches Lake Mead. Current forecasts show Mead dropping by nearly 30 feet over the next 2 years under this emergency plan, pushing it well past the 2022 record low of 1,041 feet. That record is only 13 feet below where Mead sits today. Hoover Dam could lose up to 40% of its remaining water power by fall of this year, a direct result of the emergency release cuts. That would leave the dam making less than a quarter of what it was built for. If you are finding this useful, hit subscribe. We cover water crises, failing structures, and earth science every week. The electricity Hoover Dam makes goes to specific places. The Metropolitan Water District of Southern California gets about 29% of Hoover's power. Nevada gets roughly 23%. Arizona, about 19%. The city of Los Angeles alone gets over 15%. When Hoover's output drops, every one of those customers buys replacement electricity on the open market, almost always from natural gas plants running 3 to 5 times the cost. That cost ripple reaches further than you might expect. Over 500 data centers run across Nevada, Arizona, and Southern California, many built to take advantage of cheap Hoover water power. A single large site can draw more power than a small city. As replacement power prices rise, the math of running those sites completely changes. And for water agencies like the Metropolitan Water District, which uses Hoover power to pump water over mountain ranges to reach Los Angeles, the power crisis and the water crisis feed each other. Less water means less power. Less power means more costly pumping. Higher rates do not create more water. The water side is even more pressing. Las Vegas gets 90% of its city water supply from Lake Mead, serving 2.3 million people. The original 2 intakes are already out of service. Intake number 1 stopped working when Mead dropped in 2022. The city spent $1.5 billion building a third intake at 860 feet. with a low lake-level pumping station that came online in 2022, deep enough to pull water even below the shutdown point. The supply is safe. The cost of cleaning and pumping from those depths is the real weak point. Las Vegas has cut water use per person by 55% since 2002, one of the strongest water-saving records of any major city in the country. Grass lawns are banned in new homes. Watering rules are enforced year-round. Nevada is taking a 21,000-acre-foot cut under the Tier 1 shortage, but the system is built lean enough to handle it without hitting customers directly for now. Phoenix is in a different spot. About 40% of the city's water comes from the Colorado River through the Central Arizona Project. The project takes the first and deepest cuts under federal shortage rules because Arizona's water rights are newer than California's. Under the current Tier 1 shortage, Arizona is taking a 512,000-acre-foot cut, 18% of its total share. Most of that falls on farming, but city systems are feeling the pressure. In late April 2026, Phoenix leaders announced they expect to move up to Stage 2, a formal water warning, before the end of this year. Stage 2 brings extra water fees, tighter outdoor watering rules, and cashback deals for homeowners who rip out grass lawns. Phoenix and Tucson have also launched a joint emergency water sharing reserve in case deliveries drop further. Across the full Colorado River system, 40 million people in 7 states and northern Mexico depend on a river that is putting out 40% of its normal flow this year. The Tier 1 shortage that took effect in 2026 has California, the state with the biggest share and the oldest water rights, still uncut. Arizona takes 18%, Nevada, 7%. Mexico puts in 80,000 acre-feet. If Lake Mead drops below 1,050 feet, the system enters Tier 2. That line is only 4 feet below current levels. Tier 2 brings deeper cuts to Arizona and Nevada and, for the first time, starts cutting into California's share. California has never taken a forced cut from the Colorado River in the state's history. It depends entirely on how fast Mead falls through the summer, and the emergency decision to cut Glen Canyon releases makes a faster drop almost certain. The farming damage is already showing. In Pinal County, Arizona, growers who once raised cotton and alfalfa with Central Arizona Project water have watched their water shares fall apart. Thousands of acres sit bare. Some farmers have quit for good. Others have switched to crops that need less water or sold their water rights to cities willing to pay top dollar. What is happening to Pinal County today is a preview of what city users face if the drop keeps going. The clock that matters most in this story is not the water level. It is the calendar. On December 31st, 2026, every major set of rules controlling Colorado River operations runs out at the same time. The 2007 interim guidelines that control how Glen Canyon and Hoover Dams work. The 2019 drought contingency plans that set up the tiered shortage system. The deal with Mexico under Minute 323. All of them end on the same day. The 7 basin states were supposed to work out replacement rules before that deadline. A draft environmental impact statement went out in January 2026 with a February deadline for state input. That deadline passed with no deal. Arizona called the federal plans unacceptable, warning that one version forces the state to take over 77% of all cuts across the basin, while California keeps its full share. In early May 2026, the 3 lower basin states, California, Arizona, and Nevada, announced a 2-year short-term deal to save up to 1 million extra acre-feet through 2028. That buys time. It does not fix the deeper problem. The deeper problem is math. The Colorado River Compact was signed in 1922 when the people at the table measured the river's flow at roughly 17 million acre-feet per year and split it among 7 states and Mexico. That reading was taken during a stretch of unusually wet years. The real long-term average is closer to 12 to 13 million acre-feet per year. Even that number counted on a stable climate. Today, with warming temperatures stripping 5% of flow per degree and snowpack peaking earlier every decade, the real supply is running well below 12 million acre-feet. In 2026, the river is putting out roughly 40% of the flow that the compact counted on. The states are fighting over pieces of a supply that does not exist. California holds the oldest water rights and the biggest share. Arizona, with newer rights, takes the first and deepest cuts. And the upper basin states, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, and New Mexico face their own hard truth. Under the compact, the upper basin is required to send 7.5 million acre-feet per year to the lower basin at Lee Ferry. In a year when total upper basin inflow is expected at less than 4 million acre-feet, that delivery is physically impossible. The upper basin cannot send water it does not have. Hoover Dam still stands, 726 feet of concrete locked into the walls of Black Canyon, exactly where it has stood since 1936. Nothing about the structure has failed. The turbines work, the generators work. The power lines carry electricity across 3 states, just as they have for 90 years. The river just does not bring enough water to spin them anymore. Lake Mead is 20 feet above the line where 12 turbines go dark. The snow that was supposed to protect that gap barely existed this winter, and what little fell melted a month early. The federal government is on purpose letting Mead drop further to keep the dam upstream alive. The rules that manage all of this run out in 7 months with no replacement in sight. And the one thing that could fix everything, more water falling as snow in the Colorado Rockies, depends on a climate that is moving in exactly the wrong direction. The next checkpoint is August, when the federal 24-month study sets the water-sharing rules for 2027. That report will decide whether the Southwest gets deeper cuts or whether the system crosses lines that no amount of talks can walk back. If you want to understand what happens when Lake Mead crosses 1,035 feet, that story is on screen now.